There are moments in life that don't feel important until long after they've passed, and for Nina Vale, it began with something so small it should have been forgettable. A walk down a hallway she had walked 100 times before. The same weak lighting, the same faded walls, the same quiet that always settled in the building after evening fell. But that night, the silence felt different, thicker, almost aware of her. And then she saw it. A window where no window had ever existed. It wasn't broken into the wall or newly installed. It looked accepted. As if the building itself had allowed it to be there. When Nina stepped closer, she expected to see her reflection, or maybe the opposite wall behind her. Instead, she saw another hallway. Longer. Stretched in a way that made distance feel wrong. The lights flickered differently there, dimmer, like something was draining them. And at the far end stood a figure. Still. Perfectly still, not shifting. Not breathing. Just waiting. Nina didn't understand why her chest tightened or why her instinct screamed at her to look away, but she didn't listen. She kept staring. And in doing so, she made a mistake that couldn't be undone. Because something inside that reflection shifted, not its body, not its stance, but its attention. It was no longer just there. It was aware. Aware of her. And from that moment on, Nina wasn't just walking through her building anymore, she was being watched from somewhere just behind it.by morning, the window was gone. Completely erased, like it had never existed. The wall was exactly as Nina remembered it, stained, cracked, ordinary. But that didn't make things better. It made them worse. Because now there was no proof. No explanation. Only the memory of something impossible. Nina tried to move on, tried to convince herself it had been exhaustion. Or stress or her mind slipping for just a moment. But then the note appeared. Slid quietly beneath her door without sound, without footsteps, without any sign of who had left it. When she unfolded it, her hands felt colder than they should have. For words. Simple. Careful. You look back. There was something deeply wrong about the way it was written, not rushed, not messy, but deliberate, like whoever wrote it had taken their time. After that, reality began to bend in ways that were harder to ignore. People started recognizing her in places she had never been. The elevator opened to a floor that didn't exist. And at night, when everything should have been silent, Nina began hearing something outside her door. Not random noise. Not passing footsteps. Something that moved with her. When she shifted, it shifted. When she stopped, it stopped. Like something on the other side of that door was trying to learn her pattern. Trying to understand how she moved. And one night, when she pressed her ear to the door, she heard it clearly. Breathing. Slow. Close. Waiting. As if it knew she was listening, and wanted her to sleep became something Nina started to fear. Not because of dreams, but because of what waited in the moments between them. Every night, without fail, she woke at exactly the same time, 3:12 a.m. It wasn't gradual waking. It was immediate. Like being pulled out of sleep by something unseen. And every time, she had the same feeling. That she had not been alone. Her room looked the same, but it felt rearranged in a way she couldn't explain. Subtle. Enough to be denied, but not enough to be ignored. She began noticing details that made her question. Everything. Marks appearing where there had been none. Fingerprints on the outside of her window, too high for anyone to reach. Words forming on surfaces before she touched them. Still here. Let me in. Don't turn around. At school, it followed her. Not physically, but through reflections. Screens, windows, polished surfaces, each one showing something just slightly wrong. A delay. A second version of her standing still while she moved. Watching. Waiting for her to notice. And once she did, it disappeared. But the feeling it left behind didn't. Because whatever this thing was, it wasn't just copying her anymore. It was studying her. Learning her. Piece by piece. It didn't take long before Nina realized the problem wasn't just what she was seeing. It was what others were seeing too. People described her doing things she hadn't done. Standing in places she had never been. Watching them in silence without responding. The details were always the same. She looked like herself, but something about her felt wrong. Too still. Too precise. Like a version of her that had been assembled instead of lived. Inside her own home, things started shifting. Objects moved without reason. Conversations happened that she couldn't remember. Mirrors didn't reflect her immediately anymore, they hesitated, like they were deciding what to show. And then the window came back. Exactly where it had been. Waiting. This time, there was no distance. The thing inside it was close enough to see clearly. It was her. Every detail was perfect. The same face. The same hair. The same clothes. But their expression wasn't hers. It was controlled. Measured. Intentional. Slowly, it raised its hand and placed it against the glass. And without thinking, Nina felt her own body responding, her hand lifting to meet it. That's when it formed the words. Not spoken. Not heard. But understood. You shouldn't be seeing this. And for the first time, Nina realized something that made everything worse. It wasn't surprised. She could see it. It was concerned. Fear finally forced Nina to speak. To say everything out loud. To stop pretending it wasn't real. And when she told her father, she expected denial. Instead, she got silence. The kind of silence that only comes from recognition. He didn't dismiss her. He didn't question her. He listened. And then he told her something he had spent years refusing to say. Her mother had seen the same things before she disappeared. The same reflections. The same distortions. The same feeling of being watched by something that wasn't quite part of their world. She had tried to explain it, but no one believed her. Until it was too late. As he spoke, something shifted behind them, not in the room, but in the reflection of the dark television screen. A shape standing too close. Leaning slightly forward. Watching them as they spoke about it. When they turned, nothing was there. But in the reflection, it lingered. Long enough to move. Long enough to react. Long enough to remind them of a truth they hadn't wanted to accept. This thing didn't need permission. It didn't need an invitation. It only needed one thing. To be noticed. They tried to shut it out. Covered every reflective surface. Removed anything that could show an image. But it didn't matter anymore. Because by then, it wasn't relying on reflections. It was already here. The apartment began to feel occupied in ways that couldn't be explained. Movements that didn't match. Sounds that didn't belong to anything visible. The sense that space itself was being shared with something else. And then the power went out. Everything fell silent. Too silent. And in that silence, something began to move. The elevator. Climbing. Higher than it should have been able to go. Past known floors. Into something else. When it stopped, the air changed. A cold draft moved through the building, carrying with it something heavier than temperature. And then came the footsteps. 2 sets. One natural. One slightly delayed. Not following, but synchronizing. As if something had finally learned enough to walk on its own. And now, it was coming down. By the time Nina reached the 4th floor again, she already understood. This wasn't something she could escape. It had never been. The hallway stretched unnaturally, as if distance itself had been pulled apart. And at the center of it, the window. Larger now. Thinner. Like something barely holding itself together. Inside, there were 2 figures. One was her double. The other, something familiar. Something that shouldn't have been there at all. As her father stepped forward, drawn by something he couldn't resist, everything began to distort. The walls. The light. The space between them. Nina realized the truth too late. This thing didn't force its way in. It waited. It observed. It learned. And when it understood you completely, that's when it replaced you. The glass cracked. Not outward, but inward. As if something inside had pushed against it for a very long time. Voices filled the space, layered, overlapping, all sounding like her. Asking. Pleading. Insisting. And then it was gone. Just like that. Everything returned to normal. The hallway. The silence. The world. But normal didn't mean safe. Because weeks later, in a moment she almost missed, Nina caught her reflection just slightly out of sync. Just long enough to see it, still there. Still waiting. Still patient. Because once something learns how to be you, it doesn't need the window anymore.